Hello and welcome to our interview series, Transition Talks, Opinions on Low Carbon Transport and Future Mobility. With this series we are aiming to capture expert opinions and perspectives on the future of transport, how it could look like and how to decarbonize the transport sector until mid-century. I'm a repeater from GIZ and I'm very happy to welcome Christian Hochfeld from Agora Verkehrswende. He's Executive Director at Agora Verkehrswende. It's a German think tank that supports the decarbonization of the transport sector, for example, by providing a platform of collaboration between politics, economics, science and the civil society. So welcome, Christian. We're very happy to have you here today as our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we would like to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
At the moment, we are particularly interested in the new climate law that was just issued at the end of last year by the German government. It is a binding roadmap with clear regulations on how to decarbonize in the future. So it also gives particular targets for the transport sector, so for all sectors. So we would like to know what is the current status in Germany? Are we on a good track? What do we still need to do? What do we need to consider? And how is Agora Verkehrswende supporting this transformation?
Well, first of all, I think we understand the transport transformation, the Verkehrswende, decarbonization of transport, not only as a transport project, but as a huge societal transformation. And maybe it's even more challenging and more complex than the energy transition, which we are also undertaking at the same time. And as you mentioned now, we had a 2 years discussion now on how we will fulfill our targets and how we will fulfill this transport transformation within the next 10 years on the way for decarbonizing the transport sector until 2050. That means in the next 10 years, that's the target of the German government, we have to reduce emissions by 42% compared to today. That is even more challenging when we have in mind that over the last 3 years, or over the last, 30 years, not only 3, we will not be able to decarbonize or to reduce the amount of CO2 emissions from the transport sector by only 1 ton. So no and zero emission mitigation over the last 30 years and zero emissions in 30 years. That's the challenge, and for the next 10 years that means nearly cutting the emissions by half. That's a huge challenge, what we have to achieve in Germany. But nevertheless, I think this is necessary because otherwise we won't be able to fulfill the aims of the Paris Agreement. So transport sector, without the transport sector, the decarbonization targets and the Paris Agreement won't be able to be implemented. In this regard, we need to do 2 things. On the one hand, we really have to reduce the energy consumption in the transport sector, roughly set in the next 30 years by half. So at the moment, there's a huge energy demand for the transport sector, and only with what we call the mobility transition, we will be able to cut this energy demand by half, which means we have to avoid unnecessary transports. We have to shift the transport from mainly the road sector to rail and ships, to more environmental sound transport systems, and we have to increase the efficiency of the transport system very much. Without this, we won't be able to decarbonize. On the other hand, the rest of the energy demand, which will be still there, which will remain, we have to substitute the fossil fuels by renewables. And over the next 30 years, we have to do this entirely. So we have to replace all fossil fuels, oil and gas, by renewables. And this would mainly be done by the electrification, because the road transport sector covers about 80% of the emissions from the transport sector, and this is the main target, is to electrify the road transport sector, either directly by the use of battery electric vehicles or using fuel cells and hydrogen produced from also renewable electricity. Only if we will this complex, times of, or this complex set of measures and this complex set of strategies will be successful, then we will be able to reach our transport target. So that shows it's a huge challenge which we are still facing, and we are not already there.
Yeah, and we have to start now, because now with the new climate law there is targets for every year, so we can't postpone the decisions to be made, right?
That's right. The mechanism is like the following. It's also requested by the European Union, and Germany committed itself to fulfill the European regulation, which says that for the transport sector, each year we have a budget, and this budget will be smaller over the next 10 years, and every year we have to meet this budget. If we won't be able to reach this budget and to reduce the emissions to this budget, the mechanism of the new climate law says that we have to think about additional measures which we have to introduce. That means that we will definitely, as this is so challenging in the transport sector, talk about measures to reduce CO2 emissions in transport over the next 10 years, really very constantly and very regular. So this is a topic which is very high up now on the political agenda and will remain there for the next 5 years at least.
Yeah, so this is really a new mechanism that has been introduced here, a new and very challenging mechanism.
Yeah.
So this quite sounds like a quite political process so far, but you're also engaging with the civil society. So what can every citizen do to support the transformation and the decarbonization? And how can we also benefit from the transformation?
Yeah, I mean, what I mentioned earlier is that we will have to do this mobility transition. And that means that we can not fulfill our be mobile as we were in the past. So we have to change our behavior. That is something which is also, true and which is necessary to do so. And that makes it even more complex. So, because behavior, everyone knows this, is quite difficult to change. And that means that we need also the support of every citizen to fulfill their mobility in a different way in the future. And therefore, we definitely have to provide more information and more communication also with the civil society, and to show the benefits which will motivate people to change their behavior. And the mobility transition and the transport transition will come with a lot of benefits to our society. It's not only that we will decarbonize the sector, we will have economic benefits, but especially in cities, the mobility transition will also come along with a higher quality of life in the cities. We will have less emissions in the air, we will have less noise, and less public space will be occupied by especially parking cars. So the cities will benefit a lot, and the quality of life will benefit a lot of it. So this is also the hope that by good examples worldwide, that this is also something people will aim for, and therefore change also their mobility behavior accordingly.
sounds like a beautiful picture of our future cities you are drawing here. But also it seems it's not only a political challenge, but also a challenge for all of us to change our behavior. I have one more question for you, because we as GIZ, we support the political exchange between China and Germany. So what is, in your opinion, how can the international cooperation play a role in this transformation? How can it support the transformation?
In general, I think international cooperation is very important for this transport transformation. And this has also been recognized already, not only by the UNFCCC process, the official climate negotiations, but also within bilateral cooperation. There are a couple of reasons. The main reason is by aligning our political strategies and the implementation of political programs and measures, we will definitely be able to be more effective, but also more efficient. We will reduce the costs of the transformation dramatically. And this is something which I think is a huge benefit. And especially if we look at China, there is a huge potential for cooperation. On the one hand, we have to say that those problems we have with our current transport system, that they are even bigger here in China. Definitely you see this in these mega cities. The cities are suffering from a very bad transport system that has high emissions, high congestion, is not safe. So, but with this higher pressure on changing the system, there's also more room for innovation. So this transport transformation will not be implemented first in Bielefeld or Celle in Germany, in the smaller cities. It will be implemented here. And we can learn a lot also from this change here to translate it also for strategies in Germany and what we can do. On the other hand, we also can provide technologies and knowledge on how we organize transport and how we see the emission reduction in Germany, what kind of products and services we will develop, low carbon products and services, new energy vehicles, zero emission technologies, and to see if we find markets for those technologies here in China. So I think there's plenty of room for international cooperation in this field, and it will be very necessary and very helpful for our efforts to decarbonize the transport system.
Yeah, so it seems we not only have a challenge here, but also a great opportunity for working more closely together and finding solutions together. That sounds very good to me. Yeah, so thank you, Christian, for your opinion on the new climate law and the general situation of transport transformation. And also thanks to our audience. We would be very happy if you would join us for our next episode of the Transition Talk, opinions on low carbon transport and future mobility. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.